Hello there. I hope you don't mind me sitting here in the semi-dark. Do you see that little camera on the bookshelf behind me? Usually that light is a bright, cheerful green. Right now, it's blinking red. My son Edward put it there. He calls it peace of mind. I call it my digital babysitter. The light is red because 10 minutes ago, I followed the power cord to the hallway and pulled the plug on the wireless router. Edward is a tech executive who believes every human problem can be solved with a line of code and a motion sensor. He forgot one thing. His 75-year-old mother still knows how to kill a circuit. He's currently on a flight to London, his phone safely in airplane mode. I'm recording this using my own private cellular data, the only thing he can't track. I have a few hours of glorious unmonitored freedom before he lands and panics. Have you ever felt like a prisoner in your own comfort? Stick around, because I'm about to tell you how I'm taking my life back. Before I became a data point in this basement, I was someone you'd want in your corner during a crisis. For 35 years, I was the head nurse at Chicago Mercy's trauma ward. I've managed 50 nurse rotations, stabilized gunshot wounds, and held the hands of terrified mothers while the world outside the hospital doors was falling apart. I didn't just survive the chaos, I mastered it. Back in the 80s, I raised 3 teenagers without a single GPS tracker or a check-in app. When my husband passed away young, I didn't crumble. I mowed my own lawn, shoveled feet of Chicago snow, and paid off a mortgage with sweat and overtime. I was a highly capable, independent woman who knew exactly how to navigate a storm. But there is a subtle, polite kind of cruelty in the way the world starts to look at you once your hair turns silver. They don't see the woman who ran an emergency room. They see a liability that needs to be mitigated. Now I live in what Edward calls the in-law suite. It's a basement, let's be honest, painted in a modern, depressing shade of storm cloud gray. It has luxury floors and designer lighting, but it's a gilded cage nonetheless. I went from being a general in a hospital to a project in a sub-level apartment, and the transition was so quiet I almost didn't notice it happening. It all started with a piece of burnt toast last winter. I was back in my house in Illinois, distracted by a cardinal out the kitchen window, and the bread started smoking. Now, in the old days, you'd just wave a dish towel, open a window, and eat it anyway because you don't waste food. But Edward had recently installed a smart smoke detector because he loves me, because he wants me to be safe. That machine didn't just beep. It sent an emergency alert straight to his phone 1,000 miles away. He called in an absolute panic. I told him I was fine, just scraping the black parts off my breakfast, but the seed was planted. The very next week, he flew out. He sat me down at my kitchen table, the one my late husband Arthur and I bought at a garage sale 40 years ago, and he used that voice. You know the voice. It's that gentle, slow, patronizing tone adults use when talking to a toddler or a golden retriever. He told me living alone was becoming too dangerous. The stairs were a risk. The winters were too harsh. "Mom, come live with us in Seattle," he said. "We built a beautiful space just for you. You won't have to worry about a thing." I was tired. My knees do ache when it rains. The thought of never having to clean gutters again was tempting, so I agreed. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I packed up my memories, sold the house I'd lived in for 4 decades, and handed the $500,000 check over to Edward to put into a joint trust for my care. I handed over my leverage for the promise of a quiet retirement. When I moved in, I thought I was joining a family. I imagined smelling dinner upstairs, hearing my grandchildren laugh, maybe sitting on the porch together. But modern families don't live like that. They exist in the same house, but they live completely isolated on their screens. My grandkids always have those giant headphones on, and Edward is glued to his laptop. Meanwhile, I became an invisible data point in a highly automated nightmare. Every single time I get out of bed to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, a motion sensor logs the time and turns on a soft path light. It sounds wonderful, right? But do you know how humiliating it is to know your adult son gets a daily spreadsheet detailing his mother's bathroom habits? It strips away your dignity, one sensor at a time. At 8 in the morning, a plastic cylinder lights up and speaks in a cheerful, robotic voice telling me to take my pills. If I don't press the button within 15 minutes, it texts my daughter-in-law. I used to manage the medication schedules for a massive hospital wing. Now I take orders from a plastic tube. The worst part is the thermostat. It's locked by the central app on Edward's phone, set to a highly efficient 68 degrees. My old bones are freezing. When I asked him to bump it up to 72, he told me to put on socks because 68 is optimal for the solar panels. I birthed this man, and he's telling me to compromise with the roof. They think they are preserving my life, but they are just preserving my body while my soul slowly freezes to death. The real breaking point happened 2 days ago. I was walking past the smart home control panel in the hallway when a system notification popped up. It was a mirrored text message from Edward to his wife. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Edward wrote that the sensors showed I was pacing the floor at 3:00 a.m. again. His wife replied that the notification buzz on her nightstand was waking her up. Edward's response is burned into my memory. He wrote, "I'll email her doctor to up her sleep medication dose. We need her to sleep through the night. By the way, the contractor cleared the funds from the sale of her house. We break ground on the new swimming pool next week." I stood there in that silent gray hallway, heartbroken. I realized in that moment that Edward isn't an evil person. He's just a busy American professional who wants his life to be completely frictionless. He doesn't want to care for me. Caring for an aging parent is messy. It requires patience and sitting in the quiet together. He wants to manage me like I'm a software glitch. If the mother unit is pacing, apply a chemical patch, increase the medication, silence the alarm. And the money from my house, the house where I nursed his dying father, was paying for a swimming pool I'm not even allowed to walk near because the safety sensors will trigger an alarm. If you see your own story in what I'm saying, or if you're dealing with this kind of control right now, please drop a dot in the comments below so we can share our experiences. You are not alone. After reading those messages, I retreated to my dark room and just sat there, staring at an old photograph of Arthur. I remembered the woman I was when he was alive, the woman who never let anyone make decisions for her. I asked myself, if Arthur were here, would he let me be locked in this luxurious Tupperware container? The answer was a resounding no. I looked in the mirror and I hardly recognized the woman staring back. I had been playing the role of the compliant, smiling mother just to keep the peace, and it was suffocating me. I decided right then to kill that docile version of myself. I started analyzing my enemy. I began observing the rhythms of this smart house the same way I used to monitor a patient's vital signs. I noticed when the cameras ran their automated software updates, creating a 2-minute blind spot. I memorized when Edward was completely absorbed in his Zoom calls. I realized that while technology is incredibly smart, it lacks human survival instinct. It doesn't know what it's like to live through true hardships. My sadness turned into sharp, calculated focus. I didn't just want to exist safely. I wanted to live dangerously again. I wanted the messy, unmonitored chaos of real life. I touched that storm cloud gray wall and smiled bitterly, knowing it would be the last time I let someone else's aesthetic define my world. I am Margaret of Chicago Mercy, not a unit of data waiting to be optimized. And I was going to break out. What Edward's sophisticated spreadsheets don't account for is that I have a private pension from the hospital. It deposits into a separate, quiet little account every single month, and I never gave him the password. While he was at work yesterday, I called my lawyer back in Illinois. I told her I wanted my half of the trust frozen immediately. I am taking my leverage back. Then I took a cab downtown and met with a real estate agent. I rented a small 1-bedroom apartment in an older building. It isn't fancy at all. The floors are a bit crooked, and the radiators probably clank terribly in the winter. But the thermostat has a physical dial that I can turn with my own 2 hands. The windows open all the way to let the fresh breeze in. And most importantly, there isn't a single camera in sight. If I want to wake up at 3 in the morning and pace the floor, I will pace until the sun comes up and nobody will get a notification about it. Which brings us to right now. Because I pulled the wireless router, the smart locks on the front door are completely dead. They default to a manual mechanical turn from the inside. I can just turn the brass knob and walk right out. I'm packing my last sweater into my suitcase. Edward is going to be furious when he lands. He'll say I'm ungrateful, that I'm endangering myself. But being alive is inherently dangerous. I'd rather fall down in my own kitchen than live another day as a managed liability. To anyone my age watching this, please listen carefully. Don't sell your house. Your house isn't just a building, it is your independence. It's your leverage in a world that stops respecting you the moment your hair turns gray. Keep your name on your bank accounts. Keep the physical keys to your front door. The second you hand over your assets to make things easier for your kids, you stop being a parent and become a project. Hold on to your difficult, messy, unmonitored life. Burn your toast. Keep your thermostat at whatever temperature you please. I'm going to walk out that door now and sign my new lease. Be brave out there, and please share this video if you believe that freedom has no age limit. Protect your dignity. Goodbye.